Yes, it's free
Gold.
speed.
Free speed.
Yes.
I like free speed.
Yeah, if someone brings you something as far as the technique change is concerned, it's a really good thing. Hey, this is Infinite Rowing, where we would like to have a really close look at your technique, because one of the best ways to speed you up is to slow you down. Today we're having a look at the Western Australian Ladies Masters State 8 during their preparation for Australian Masters Nationals in Sydney. They placed 4th, but the difference between silver and 4th place in that race was a mere 1 second. Do we think we could have given them enough free speed to be able to push through for medal contention? Hell yes. Right, so we are in Zoom and we have the usual guys, Renee in Perth, Graham in Johannesburg. And let's have a look at the video.
Okay. So Renee, talk us through the 8 we have here. This is your Australian regional
Yes,
crew,
guys.
right?
Full disclosure, the number 2 seats in this boat is occupied by our very own Renee. So yeah, it'll be interesting to have an idea of how the crew felt from within the boat, as well as us looking from outside.
Yeah, brilliant. So this was basically the state 8. We've got 4 different clubs in that boat. At our state champs, we had to do this race in order to get the qualifying time. Otherwise, WA wouldn't have sent us over.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, obviously it looks like there are a raft of different styles in the boat, which is obviously the challenge coming from different clubs and different philosophies. Everybody's got a slightly different way of doing it, and that's evident here. But just by looking at that freeze frame and seeing the different body positions, I suppose the coach's issue here would have to be to get everybody to do the same thing. So just off the bat,
I think while you're drawing, we had one issue we did have is we've got predominantly 4 scullers in that boat that row mainly scull.
so I'm just looking at those 2 body angles there, which those would be what I would say is in the, and this one also not bad. So those 3, obviously all 3 on bow side by the looks of things at this stage, look like they are kind of swinging in unison. So I think problem child here for me has got to be her there. If she's very tall, so and we'll have to look a little bit more and see how much she does move her body, but she's sitting quite upright already, so there's every chance, and we'll have a look at it just now, that she's actually moved quite early with her shoulders, which means she's a lot more upright than everybody else. Her legs are still more bent than everyone else. She's also sitting up a little bit upright for my taste, but in quite a strong position, but still got lots of leg left. So she's got a little bit to go. She can swing to the 1 o'clock from there. But this for me, that hanging off the blade, starting to pull, those arms are bent, so starting to drive and her legs are still bent. So maybe starting to pull a little early. And this lady here has actually swung quite a long way back. I think she's sitting quite upright here, almost slightly 1 o'clock already. So legs flat, nowhere to go. So all of the back end, I mean, look at where the blades are. They kind of haven't even, in most cases, still beyond the 90. These are a little bit ahead of the 90, behind the 90. So she's got to row that whole back end just with her arms, because she's finished the body swing. So it's going to be quite tough. So that we need some looking at. Let's deal with the stroke here. Also sitting quite forward, I think. Yeah. A little bit forward there. Not bad. So yeah, I'd have to say that bow side, just on second reflection, and we have looked at this video before, at this point are looking like they kind of hooked up to the same thing. Strokes are feels like they're a bit all over the place. I don't like talking about body positions too much, but you should kind of be in the same neighborhood. And then just have a look at this. Also sitting a little bit upright at that point. So started the swing. So it's just timing issues, I guess, yeah. So that's just, I mean, obviously we're dealing with one frame. Let's just watch and see what happens here. So watching it in motion, it looks okay. From there, say, Kev, you pointed this out before, is that they're quite locked up here. Everybody's kind of connected to the work there. I'm still feeling that, see the arms bent here. Arms bent. Quite a lot. I mean, there's
that's an
quite
outside
heavy
arm
into the drive. Yeah, so that's like outside, that's an outside arm that's bent. So that should be straight. And look there, nicely hanging off it. Outside arm loaded up, outside arm loaded up, outside arm loaded out. Inside arm cocked a little bit, but she's kind of sitting quite straight. So that's, her shoulder's not that far around. And, but everything fully extended, yeah, loaded. So everybody at this point is loaded up. So you connect it to the boat and you're driving it. Still loaded. The stroke's already climbing out of the water. So the pressure has gone too much. So she's probably sitting in a slightly weak position here. She's too loaded, can't hold on to it. But carrying her hands, wouldn't say too low, but lower than everybody else. I look there on the bow side. Look at the arms and outside arms. Renee, you're pushing through the top here. So at the moment you're not connected up. So these two in the middle, blades are buried. That's starting to come out, and then obviously you'll see what happens. Now this is a height issue, which I think was corrected. And so stroke's gone already. That blade's gone. I'm just watching Renee. You seem to almost dig in a little there. So there I find it strange at this part of the stroke that the blade's not in the water yet. And look where your legs are, Renee.
Yeah, we were really struggling with height. I think we took down about 3 spaces off each gate.
Yeah, that's quite a lot. So obviously it was rigged up for a men's crew or something beforehand. Yeah. So yeah, at this stage, yeah, everybody, I mean, you should be like well into holding on to the finisher, and almost everybody to a fault is kind of already losing it. But as a crew, there's no traction there. So hence the kind of wheel spinning comment that came up. It just looked like you had no traction on the boat, and that there was a lot of energy going in, but just not getting a lot of return for it. So when we kind of slow-mo through it, you can see that. So that second half of the stroke is just from here, from the 90 through to the back end. There's just no delivery there. So the boat doesn't gain any more speed. So if you took the blades out, here and finished the stroke, you wouldn't lose any more speed because of what you were doing here. But that's, obviously that needs to be rectified with the height. So that would be the remedy, is to lower the heights, which you guys obviously did. And then I suppose a lot of other things would have changed. Once you're at a more comfortable height, then I think a lot of things would have fixed themselves. I still think the stroke's kind of overloading herself here. She's really, really getting onto it, and probably not going to sustain it, because at a point in the stroke, she's carrying the whole boat on her own, which means she's lifting nearly a ton in the water, which is just too much so you've got to be really careful as a stroke that you kind of fit in with everyone around you in terms of the power curve, and don't overdo it. And you see that because every time she pops early, because she just can't sustain it. And that makes sense. Yeah, there's just no ways your body's going to break, and you can't hang on to it, especially when you get down to using the small muscles. So if she's using her arms on the back end, So let's just look here. So yeah, a lot of body swing going down in the boat, and the strokes are here, going down in the boat. So that combined with the fact that you guys are rigged high is just a kiss of death. Looking at 7, who we said was a little bit upright, more upright in the body swing. That's quite a good sit back position. She looks nice. Really tall. So she looks really tall. But again, looking at the so looking at the load up here, let's just look at the catch. Yeah, you pointed this out before, Kev, where it took a long time to get in the water.
I think if we have a look at it from the point of view of just measuring from the absolute reach which is there to the full extraction, as measuring that as the length of the stroke, and then seeing which part of that is actually effective. I think that's going to be able to give these guys a good idea about how much of that stroke is actually making the boat move and how much of it is actually just kind of going through a motion. Right, so that's effectively where the full length of the stroke would be, right? So
so you'd want to bury the blade there,
yeah, you would want to, and then I would imagine a drill for this would be kind of the idea of doing a roll up, or having a few members of the crew sit the boat, and the other few just take 1 or 2 strokes and then put the blade in and allow the boat to push them back, so that they can get that feeling of getting the blade in and having it effective from the first centimeter. Because if you look, that's about where I would say there's effective connection taking place between that stroke blade and the water. So effectively, if you take off, how much is that? I mean, that's probably out 30 centimeters, 40 centimeters. That's a huge piece of the stroke.
So yes, we have to accept that the boat is moving, but it's taken that amount of movement in the boat. Just remember, the boat's not static, so it is a net loss. Had you have allowed gravity to drop the blade in at full reach, but it's taken that long to actually connect with the water.
And what worries me more than the actual time that it's taken to connect the water, in other words, how effectively the spoon is acting on the water, is that in order to have got to that stage, there had to be movement in the boat. In other words, there was pressure against the foot stretcher. So the boat's not connected between the first stripe and the next one. However, during that time, there's pressure against the foot blade. So during that time, there is complete deceleration. You know what I mean? It's not an effective move through the stroke at all.
Yeah.
And I think if we think about the fact that we're losing connection, probably there you start seeing blades coming out of the water. Do another green one there.
Yeah. So that's effective. That stroke is effectively going nowhere after that. I mean, even a little bit before that, because she's tearing in the water. So another analogy I've used.
So Graham, just run it to the complete reach at the other end.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 frames, and we're basically done here. So that's the end of the finish and starting the recovery.
Right. So the effective part of the stroke is green to green. The green to red is ineffective, and during the time when it's not locked into the water, you know what's happening. The boat's not moving forward; it's being pushed backwards.
Yeah, especially if you have your weight biased onto your feet around the front, as you say. Yeah. So, and then overdriving, particularly with reference to the stroke, possibly overdriving during the drive, like really trying to get as much power on. And it's like trying to push a car standing on a gravel road on loose pebbles, which is an analogy I've used. I mean, we're putting a blade into water here. So there's only so much pressure you can put on it before you break the surface tension and start to create a hole in the water. And the moment you've done that, all of that energy is wasted. So you almost have to kind of cup the water in your spoon and hold it there. all the way through the drive from start to finish. And if you can do that, you're successfully propelling the boat. The moment you go more than that, it's just wasted energy, complete waste.
It's a bad relationship, you know, when you're putting in too much into a relationship and not getting anything back.
Yeah.
Like this crew's they're buying flowers for their wife every night, and she's like, yeah, whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's you're putting in a lot, but you're not getting much back.
So yeah, I mean, if you look at, if you look at it at this stage, and I gather you guys improved significantly by the time you got to championships. Otherwise, you wouldn't have posted a 329. But there was certainly loads of room to find more free speed, if you like, just by cleaning up some detail and consolidating the drive. So in terms of the the placement remedy, I would have thought that, yeah, like you say, keep rowing as the crew in pairs and fours as a unit with a stable platform, and just allow them to have the boat drift underneath them, and then let gravity drop the blade in, and then leave the shoulders alone and squeeze, feeling the load up in the lower core through the lat and the glutes at the front part of the stroke, and then transferring onto the quads through the middle part of the stroke as the heels came down
So
on the footboard.
There's that nice exercise, and I don't know if you've tried it or heard about it, but I mean, if you get the crew, obviously with the weight of an 8, right? You've got a lot of momentum anyway. If you've got the boat moving, and then every third or fourth stroke, you have the guys literally put the blade in and don't put any pressure at all, and just allow the blade to push you backwards in the slide. It's a really good drill to just kind of feel for putting the blade in, and now that it's in, if you aren't applying pressure at that stage, then you're not helping the boat. But if you're applying any pressure before that stage, you're also not helping the boat.
There's another one you could try, which is kind of really strange, and but it also demonstrates a similar thing. Is if you go, let's say, the bow for rowing, and you have the stern pair, so you paddle a bit, and then you have the stern pair join in as well, but then you have them roll up to the front, and when they get to the front, literally drop the blade in and let go of the handle, and then just move to avoid the handle and watch the handle actually come back towards them because of the momentum of the boat. So kind of similar to what you're saying, but it's just a live demonstration of that. The handle will move by itself, without you, because of the momentum of the boat. So you just have to get on and add a little bit to that to propel the boat.
Just to add to that, I mean, for me, the extraction and the end of the stroke is is one of my favorite things to work on. I mean, everyone talks the catch, the placement, and that's true. But I think the extraction is a little bit underrated, and something that I think we need to do a whole video on. But I think the fact that people have been indoctrinated or forced to do tap out drills and square extractions and that type of thing allows for this thing where you can see these blades are almost washing out the last 20 centimeters of the stroke. And that's because people are trying to make sure that they're coming out all nice and square. Whereas that slightly lazier feather out of the vortex for me means that you can keep the blade in the water a little bit longer and make that last piece a little bit more effective.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the finish is a slightly more organic thing. But if we don't hurry the finish, I'm more from a school of take the time to finish the stroke out of the back before you consider moving and getting on. For years and years and years, we've been coached quick hands, and that kind of leads to this. People anticipating that they're coming to the finish, so they're already moving their hands in a downward position because they don't want to get trapped, especially in an 8, because if you get caught at the back end, you get tossed out of the boat. So there's like a fear that the finish is coming. So instead of driving it, you're actually backing off, which is a self-fulfilling prophecy, because if you back off, you are going to get caught at the finish. So you got to keep positive energy on it.
Whole new video, hey? whole new video on extraction, and yeah,
Completely.
I hope everyone joins us for that, because it's going to be quite good. I've got a bit of ideas as far as visuals just to demonstrate the points I'm trying to make with that. I liken it to if you've got a bow and arrow and you want to fire an arrow off. You know, by the time that you've had your drive, you've completed your drive, it's like drawing the bow and arrow. And then when you let go of the water, it's the same as letting go of the arrow. You don't like fling your hand off the end of the string. You just release it. You just allow it to slip through your fingers and then propel itself through the bow. And I think that the boat moving through the water is a little bit like that. You almost just want to let go of the water. You don't want to aggressively pop out of it or anything to that effect. But I think that'll be a really cool one to see.
I love that analogy, and I will use it, Kevin. Thank you. I think that's a wonderful way to put it, and I think it's absolutely spot on. It's just too often that there's this, you know, shove your hands away. Why would you do that? You've just made the boat move. Leave it. Let it move. You know, you've just put all this energy into it.
Yeah. Just give it room to do its job. At the end of the day, you know, us as the meaty lumps that make the boat do things. We have a certain job, and once we've completed our job, we have to let the boat do its job, and the boat's job is to move, and it's designed to do nothing else. You're not better than the science that went into making the boat.
And yeah, I mean, even though you're losing the finisher, I mean, this boat, it wants to run. It's moving, and it wants to run, even though the energy is coming off the boat halfway through the drive. It still wants to run.
Guys, I think there's an interesting thing that I'd like to just point out here, and that is you can see that the boat is being drawn nicely towards the direction of the finish during the recovery, but there is definitely a movement of the boat backwards in
watch the bow.
Just watch how it moves backwards from there to there.
Let's go back. Let's go back.
It bobs quite a bit backwards.
Yeah, just watch. Yeah, you can see it here. Watch the bow. As they get to the front, it sits up, and that sit up is when everybody's landing as a collective, landing on their feet before the blades are drawn in. So that time it took from full stretch to getting the blades in, you guys are all weight down on the feet. If you're sitting on your bums, no problem. You can be a lot easier. You don't have to rush as much. You can just relax and drop it in, because you're not disturbing the boat on the recovery. So the key thing is not to disturb the boat at all during the recovery, and leave it running.
And I think that the thing of where, you know, there's time taken to find connection, and the time taken from full stretch till connection is actually part of the drive, because the feet are pushing down during that stage, and effectively you're moving that hull backwards. I mean, that was definitely one of the things I picked up. And I mean, hell, if we could just imagine just taking half of that off each stroke. I mean, how much of the 2 or 3 seconds that you took, you know, to not come into the medals would have been fixed by that.
Interesting. Exactly. That I think just prior to that, Kev. So just prior to that, if I look at the boat, slightly different attitude. So you must have gone into a push, and I think what happened there was the quad was starting to come, and the cox called for a push to hold them off, and then the attitude of the boat changed quite a bit. So here it is decelerating, but it's not quite as bad. As it gets worse, because I think when you just after here you start to really fire it up, and then it even sits up even more. So it becomes self-defeating. So you're rowing harder, but you're also stopping the boat harder. So before that, it looked like it just had a gentle rocking motion. It's still not good, but it wasn't as bad. So now when you're really you're into the red boys and you're trying to give it for the last 250, the boat's actually sitting up harder, and you're having to work even harder. And the net gain in speed is probably minuscule, but the energy effort that's gone into making that speed has probably almost doubled.
Yeah,
definitely. I think we had our hearts and soul in that, and unfortunately that age-old thing of you trying to muscle it instead of just gently rowing like a girl. So yes, after watching that video footage and going back to our next coaching session, we dropped the heights. We all felt a lot more comfortable. We actually moved our position from 60 centimeters from the gate down to 57, realizing we're quite a small crew, so we were rowing quite heavy. And we did drills, roll-ups, we did quite a bit of tapping just to get the timing in. And I think we did manage to get a better body swing together, relying more on the legs and the back. Getting the finish, getting the rock back, and then getting the hips over. There's weights to the back of the seat and weights on the pelvis to the front of the seat.
Front of the seat, yeah. Yeah. And the key there is, I suppose, is not to throw your head forward or your shoulders, but to allow that movement to inform your head and your shoulders where they should be.
Yes.
So to start from lower down, and they will inform the position of your head and shoulders, as opposed to leading with your head and shoulders, which is not the right thing to do, because then you're just bending your spine.
So you're definitely putting yourself in a position where you're opening up your chest for your lungs to make more space for themselves anyway. You're able to take that big first breath after the drive, and start opening up your chest in order to be able to get your hands to separate at the catch, which is that nice strong catch position, that or placement position that we really want.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. I think one of the big things as well that I would prefer as a coach is that there wasn't enough. I think there was almost too much panic in a situation like this, that we didn't have enough time to row together as a crew. So we did a lot of just full crew rowing. You know, you do the warm-up in sixes and then you go to full crew rowing instead of being patient. And that's maybe a lesson for next year if they're going to have a state 8, to get that set by January, so you've got months to work on it. Because all these drills where you split everyone up, yeah, we just weren't able to do that.
Well, the funny thing is, if you spent a portion of every session working on that, so it's all about setting a platform for the session and setting a platform for the crew going forward. If you don't have that platform, you can't start to work, because it's just going to get worse. So it's really important, and that's why they call it a warm-up. And it's not about just warming the body up, it's warming the brain up and the mind and the technique and everything. And everybody forgets that. They think, oh, we're warm, let's start working. But we're not rowing together as a crew. So there is that sense, especially when you're rowing in a crew boat, that you need to give people time to come together, because they've been all over, different parts of the world or town that day. So you need the time for that to kind of gel, and you can't force it. It comes by itself. And that's why you have a warm-up. And that's so sometimes just rowing to wait for that to happen. When the chatter stops and people start to kind of think about it, and you know that you've got them mentally engaged, because if they're not mentally engaged, you can say what you like, nothing's going to happen.
Okay, thanks everyone for your inputs, huh?
Thanks,
you.
Guys.
Okay.
We'll see you on
Until
the next
next
job.
time.
Until next time, indeed. Ciao.